Happy Saturday and welcome to Phoenix Talks. We are
Hello.
back. Both of us are back this week. I am rejoined by my friend and my co-host Diane RDBiase, and I am Micah Briggle-Wolf Grant. And we gather together here on YouTube once a week to bring a topic that we feel needs to be discussed. And you will literally see live how this manifests and unfolds for us because we don't prepare ahead of time. One of us thinks of the topic and the other one says, okay, and we think about it for a day, for a week, however long it is, but it's literally whatever comes off the top of our minds on that topic. And because of the last time that we talked, we were talking about personal boundaries
Yeah.
when we were last together. And during the course of that conversation, it came to my heart about the one word sentence no, and how that also bridges a gap between boundaries and justification, which that's what we're going to be talking about today, and going back and forth and trying to shed a little bit of light on the what, the why, and the how to hopefully get away from that.
Absolutely. And we'll start with the why. And it's because you're having a trauma response. Over explaining is a trauma response. Feeling responsible or obligated is a false sense that was created in you in order to maintain your control of you. And so as you heal those deeper wounds from whatever kind of circumstances and situations you come from, you have to understand that your over explaining isn't necessary. No is a full sentence. You, as a sovereign being, are allowed to take care of your needs first. And those that are bothered by you setting boundaries are the ones who are benefiting from you not having any boundaries. You don't need to justify yourself to anyone. And if you feel pulled to, their response tells you where they're at for you.
Mm-hmm. And there is a borderline between feeling like you have to justify yourself, feeling like you have to over-explain yourself, and lying. Just this morning, I saw a TikTok about somebody saying that he would rather tell the truth. If somebody asked him if he wanted to do something, he would just say, no, I don't want to, instead of lying or over-explaining why he didn't want to. It was just, nope, don't want to.
Right.
And
That's
that's
how I
100% okay. Even though, as a society, humans are trained otherwise. Well, why?
Yes.
Doesn't matter why.
Yes.
And
Do you
that's
to keep
very,
that societal thing going, or do you choose to shift into something that feels more authentic? Because to acknowledge the why, okay, that society is the way it is because it's loaded with judgment, which we've touched upon. It doesn't live authentically. People make up stuff all the time, exaggerate on stuff. We lie all the time unconsciously as a society because that's what we're taught.
right.
So, right. So if you're being honest with yourself, we've talked about truth and honesty. You
I mean,
recognize,
there's the validation that we talked about in our first episode.
yeah, they can hear that. Sure, you're fine. Sorry.
But there is that need for validation because of that lack of self-confidence that people feel inside. But then there's the justification of I matter, I exist,
Yeah,
and I do this because. Now, there's also a fine line between justification and deflection
yeah.
that we could have another conversation about deflection, because
Mhm.
sometimes justification is a validation of deflection for something that you did that you're not happy with having done. Now, if you feel like you have to justify your existence, that's where we want to help you today,
Yeah.
because you matter. And that's what you need to understand. That's what everyone on the planet needs to understand. And extend outwards, is that you matter.
Yeah.
There
And
are reasons that that people do things,
yeah,
but the
you
ends don't always justify.
need, right, exactly. So you need to accept those aspects of yourself that do hurt and that did receive damage. It has no bearing on your intelligence. It has nothing to do with anything other than learning what you don't like. It's if you keep that heart-centered space of learning about yourself and learning what you like and don't like, you're going to be able to understand yourself and understand what really feels right to you, because you can't be authentic and honest with yourself if you're not actually allowing yourself to observe yourself in that way without the judgment that was projected onto you and programmed into you from society. So we if I do something wrong, I own it immediately, because to me, like, well, why wouldn't I own it? I just did that. Oops. Okay. All right. Note to self, I won't do that again. And if I do, forgive me, it might be ADHD, you know,
Right.
but I don't linger in some type of space that would ruminate on the implication that I've done something wrong.
Right.
And there's a lot of that rejection sensitivity issue that occurs with CPTSD and other types of trauma, which is why we over explain, because we're trying to maintain our safety. We're so used to inconsistency and people growing up around us that we need to explain everything in order to make sure that they know that it's safe not to blow up at them. It's like you're controlling other people's reactions to you by over explaining.
Right.
So there's that piece of you having to also now make yourself feel safe.
Exactly. And one of the other things that has popped up in the meantime of us deciding to have this conversation is when something happens to another person via a predatory fashion, whether it's male, whether it's female, doesn't matter. But the victim, so many times, they are put into a position that they have to over justify why they're feeling unsafe, what was done to them, that they didn't cause it, that this wasn't brought to them. So this is one of those justification moments and trends that's in our society that is so hard to overcome when it comes to feeling like you don't have to over justify just existing or how you feel about something that was done to you. I feel this way because.
Right.
Part of justification is also ownership. If you feel like you have to over justify, then you're not really taking ownership for how you feel. Regard and recognizing that how we feel, how you as a viewer feels, is a product of your thoughts, my thoughts. How I feel is mine, how you feel is yours. And it's a product of those thoughts from what you hear, from what you've learned. And that is where our accountability lies, is how we feel internally, personally.
Right.
And if we feel like we have to justify that existence to somebody else just to gain approval, which is typically why we see justification happen, is to gain approval. Take a different look.
And why are we seeking to gain approval from individuals who are committed to misunderstanding us?
Yes.
So now you're opening up a whole new Pandora's box. Maybe they'll
That
be
I
next
did warn
week.
you about. I did warn her before the podcast that there was going to be a branch that
Please. All of these juicy topics have branches.
yes,
All of them.
they really do.
Because we're all subject to the human condition, and we all struggle with a broken system that is now awakening to its brokenness, if you will. So these talks that we do every week are so important.
I agree.
Yeah. And we don't need to justify it.
No. And it's one of those things. And here's an important point. I actually may clip this point out because, well, wait, there it went. Fleeting thought. Got to grab it. Come back. Okay. It just
It's all good. It'll come back
thoughts
when
are
it's time.
transient like that. So sometimes you can catch them, but sometimes there's a shiny over here that causes, oh, wait, and then you can't, then it just scrambles the mind.
That's a little spicy thing.
There it is. Found it. What we do here isn't for everyone, but it's about everyone.
Right.
And whether or not what we say has anything to do with how you personally feel, or if it resonates how we view it, okay. If it does, great. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Leave a comment below. Let us know that you like it, you love it, and you want to have more. But if you don't, we're fine with that too.
But if you do, let us know what topics you want us to cover.
Please, please, that'll help because both of us have busy lives, and sometimes it's literally a 5 minute before. Oh, that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, but
Um,
we rise to the challenge every time.
we really do. I want to sneak in a self-awareness exercise for everyone, and I say it that way because it needs to be incorporated. Make a conscious effort to pay attention and be aware of your thought patterns and behaviors. And if you catch yourself explaining yourself to someone as if you're obligated to give them every detail of your life or whatever emotional reaction it is internally, even if it doesn't feel like a big one, it's still something. It's a repeat pattern that is self-sabotaging, because you're extending your energy out every time that you explain yourself. You're giving of
Someone needs
yourself.
an example. I can feel it. No one believes me. Okay, there's your example.
Yes. So that feeling of feeling unheard and feeling misunderstood, it may just be that whoever you're interacting with is not at your level of understanding. So what Micah was saying before was recognize that everyone is living their own life and they're all looking through the limited lens of their own personal experience, whatever limited knowledge they've gained, whatever limitations with interactions in different groups and whatnot kind of people. So it could be that you haven't met somebody who understands you and you haven't been able to feel heard, because you're surrounded by individuals that are operating at a different vibration. And sometimes, a lot of times, most of the times, those other vibrations are much lower and they're abusive and they're unhealthy and they're toxic. So understand that about yourself, that you may just be at a different level of understanding already without realizing it. So expand your knowledge. Go learn everything.
Answer your question, why? Because it's going to be asked. Why? Like a 5-year-old that annoys the parent. When a parent says, I want you to go and do this, why? Because I said so. Why?
Exactly.
And a lot of times that why gets stuck.
It does, but you can throw in a where, you can throw in a how, you can throw in a when, and just continue from there and allow yourself to really be a question asking extraordinaire, but remind yourself to remove judgment so that you can objectively reflect and discern how you feel about something.
There,
Understand why you
this is
over
going
explain.
towards a branch of a positive side of justification. Because it isn't all negative. We do need justification in our lives. Because part of that is what pushes us, like Diane was saying. Why do I feel this way? There's part of justification into why you're feeling that way.
Mm-hmm.
Why does this work this way? Why do little boys like to take their toys apart, and little girls too? Why do they like to take them apart? Because they want to know why it works. What makes it work? So when you're looking to justify a question that you have in search of something to an answer for growth, 100% positive. But when it's to validate, which is, I'm so glad we had that conversation prior to. If you haven't taken a look at that, guys, go back. It's in the list. Go back and take a look at that, because a lot of times validation and justification go hand in hand. Because we didn't set good enough boundaries.
Yeah. All these little branches in the root.
Yeah.
So I'm surrounded by trees.
I had my wolf looking through the forest. So yeah. But how do we know the difference?
We only find out the difference when we do the work. You
Yes.
have to do that self-awareness work. That's how you'll learn the difference. It's not, yours is not going to be the same as mine, because we're each unique individuals.
Right.
So everyone has to do their own research on themselves. And unfortunately, sometimes this research requires unpleasant experiences that hurt and that make you triggered. But that's how you're learning about yourself.
It's been said that when, regardless of what kind, when you experience pain, it's the indication that healing is occurring.
Right. Right.
I mean, even in laughter, heavy laughter, where, you know, we grew up hearing, oh, whose tickle box just got knocked over, or whose giggle box just got knocked over, because we can't stop laughing. It's another expression of crying. Yeah. It's another way of releasing. You're experiencing an emotion on such a high level,
right,
that it's just coming out. When it's sadness or equivalent, it's tears, heavy breathing. When it's something hysterical, it's laughter and heavy breathing. It's a release.
Yeah. So I'm going to touch upon a string here that I've noticed here in this conversation, is that there's this essence of having to go back to being a child, asking the whys, allowing yourself to just experience something and joy and be, you know, joyful in your no and whatever. So,
well, I did kind of dangle that string for you to grab onto.
Yes.
Because that's where a lot of it begins.
It begins. So, however, in childhood is also the damage. You're over explaining yourself to keep yourself safe. So what I want you to do is focus that childlike energy into what Micah and I are talking about, that is healthy childlike connectedness into yourself, and important to your own healing and moving you forward. So letting go whilst taking control.
I've said it before, and I will probably say it 1,000 times while I still have breath in this body. What happened then, unless it is still happening now, is no longer happening. How you were raised is over. Who raised you is no longer there. unless they are. Who hurt you, unless they are, is no longer there. So the only way that we manage to keep the pain we feel alive is by allowing it and maintaining it in our thoughts, in our actions, in our need for validation, in our lack of forgiveness, in our inability to set healthy boundaries, in the excessive amounts of justification that we feel we have to give.
Yes.
So that we feel safe.
Yes. So the follow-up question to why is, what am I going to do about it? Are we going to maintain that same pattern over and over again? Or are we going to choose to shift into, well, what don't I like about it? And what can I do differently to make sure that I have a different experience?
The hardest part is catching it.
Yes. That's why I want you to practice consciously being aware of your thoughts, consciously being aware of your behaviors and actions. Are they representative of someone who is still offering justification for their very existence and why they are doing it? Like, you don't have to explain yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do feel like you have to explain yourself to protect yourself, then you need to do two things. You need to understand why you feel that way, and then you need to see what is it within yourself that isn't resonating with what you're saying. That's a deeper one to dive into. Because then, are you being honest with yourself? Why are you offended and needing to justify? Is it righteous anger or is it your ego? You'll figure it out with that loving self-analysis. And then you'll be able to discern. And then stop saying all these extra things we don't need to say.
Right. And one thing everyone should understand, ego is part of you, good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot, I have to laugh every time I see somebody say, I have really gotten a grasp on my ego. Aren't you proud of me? Contradicted themselves in a singular statement.
Yes.
Because ego doesn't need.
We're
gonna avoid that rabbit hole real quick. Because we could go down a whole big rabbit hole about ego. But one thing that will help you to recognize if you find yourself over justifying, do you make excuses? When somebody asks why you didn't do something, do you find yourself coming up with an excuse instead of the truth? As a previous manager, I would have employees out of uniform. Oh, I forgot. What? Well, my dog ate it. It fell off my head. You just didn't. Let's be honest here. You just didn't want to. This is what I want to hear. You don't like the fact that you had to wear it, so you're justifying in another way why it should be okay by me that you don't have it.
Yeah. So you're bringing up another version or reason for justification. So the root of justification is not feeling safe. So
Yes.
part of the questioning that you do in your self-analysis is going to be, why don't I feel safe?
Right.
Because it's not always you. Sometimes you're in the wrong place with the wrong people. You're not resonating with that. And it's a recognition that doesn't resonate. And that's okay too. Decide what to do about it from there. You're going to stay there, misery, or go somewhere else.
You have a choice.
You do have a choice. And sometimes people need to hear that. They don't know they have a choice. They don't understand that there is a choice. Expand your knowledge and you'll understand.
Because there's so many different stimuli around them telling them otherwise.
Right.
All of us deal with that.
Yeah.
You need to pay your bills. You have to get a job. You have to get all of this pressure that's put on us to perform in a certain way. And if we don't live up to that performance that we think other people are expecting of us, then we have to justify why we're not at that level, yet why we stay. I can't leave because I don't have a bridge to go to.
Well, justification comes from judgment too. Like, why are we judging ourselves? Why are you judging others? Why are you just judging, period? You have to release that judgment and let yourself observe and understand so that you can learn what you decide is right for you. There's billions of people on this planet. We ain't all gonna wear the same underwear and deodorant.
Or not. Or
So,
not.
or not. It's really what resonates with you, and you can't discover that if you're judging yourself because you're placing yourself in those boxes.
Justifying is proving.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it can get any simpler than that.
Right. What have you got to prove and why? The only
Yeah.
thing you have to prove is to yourself, or the only person you need to prove anything to is to yourself. To be better than you were the day before and different and taking another baby step towards your own personal health and well-being and goals. And that's all the only person that you need to do that with. That's it.
And why don't you believe me? What do I have to tell you about this topic so that you'll believe me?
Yeah.
It's one reason why there's so many different branches and so many different tangents in this one conversation, is because that's what it all boils down to. Why don't you believe me?
Get rid of the need to feel heard.
Exactly.
Validate yourself. Get into your own space of understanding about yourself. You don't need other people to believe you.
Right.
Believe yourself.
And this is another branch of forgiveness.
Right. And
Because, go ahead.
so I just want to take a quick moment to remind people that self-sabotage also looks like different forms of self-deprecation that include gaslighting yourself or doubting yourself, because that also adds to this piece of this branch with a lot of twigs on it.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
when you release judgment, you release the idea that you're supposed to have a specific outcome and be a certain way, etc., and you'll help yourself. Because otherwise you're just going to get stuck in that weird loop. So don't self-sabotage.
Accept yourself
Mm-hmm.
as a beautiful being with the same amount of capability of internal wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
knowledge seeking, growing, extending compassion, receiving compassion, extending love, receiving love, feeling safe, and making safe. Every human being on the planet has that capability and so much more. When you watch ants crawling across the ground, do you think that they justify their existence to each other? No, they work as a unit to achieve the same goal. Try and cut down a tree. It has deep roots. Doesn't justify why. It just grows. And the branches, you can cut them. More will appear. I have no idea why this is coming through right now, but I'm just allowing it.
Absolutely. And there's so many
Because sometimes I just feel this stream of consciousness coming through that just exits out.
It's going to flow because it applies. I mean, the folks have to solidify their own roots. And that
Yeah.
starts within, and that starts with you treating yourself better and nurturing yourself and making sure that you take care of your needs first. Learning, expanding, evolving. Don't worry about the people around you. Why are you taking responsibility on for their emotions and reactions? If you're still living in abuse, are you actively taking any steps towards your exit plan? Any kind of steps,
Right.
any
We
steps.
do have a comment from our YouTube live chat. You're a bit over relaxed today, and your volume is a little bit lower than normal.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Does that help?
We'll see. But I did want to bring that to the attention. We apologize if you can't hear Diane as well today. She's a little relaxed. As you can see from the trees behind her, she's in a very serene state today. And that's okay.
Self-care Saturday.
Self-care Saturday.
Oh, back
The
to
questions that you can ask yourself.
questions you can ask yourself. Why don't I feel safe? Um, who is around me, and why? What am I feeling from these people or this person or whatever? And why do I feel like I need to explain myself to them? Do they make me feel like I'm doing something wrong? These are all indicators for you to analyze. Don't internalize them. You're justifying because you're internalizing. Even when you're offended in justification, you're still internalizing. So why are we internalizing? Just review. Ask yourself what you're going to do about it. What could you do differently in the future to not attract that kind of energy? And it's a trial and error thing. I'm just going to throw this in there. It really is a trial and error thing because we're still evolving as beings, and we need to have experiences in our lives present themselves in order for us to understand what it is that we like and don't like. So you have to give it time to unfold and just let it be what it is. Don't judge your experience. Don't judge where you're at in life. Don't judge what your house looks like. Don't judge yourself, because you're always, how many times people come over your house and be like, oh, I'm so sorry for the mess. Who cares? Don't
And
justify
how many
it.
times, and this is personal, and how many times does this come out? And the people are like, what?
Yeah,
What do you mean it's messy?
yeah, exactly. So again, it's self-judgment. So be aware of all those little everyday things that we do to self-sabotage without realizing it.
Right.
And you'll start to see a difference in your experience.
And one thing that helps, as I try and grab onto that string that's trying to get away from me, it's going. Thought, perfect. Your feelings. When you feel like you have to over-explain because somebody isn't hearing you, you are responding to so many things that you don't even realize. And that's where I come in to point out for you to take note on. In those moments, when you feel like you have to over-explain, what body language are you reading? What eye is coming at you? What tone are you hearing? What are all of these things solidifying that thought that's creating that feeling of not being safe and having to express more so that you do? Meanwhile, all of this is going on and you are internalizing external what's coming at you.
Mm-hmm.
Allowing that feeling to grow, which is just a thought. It starts here, expands here based on how you allow it. If you don't want to justify yourself, don't. The more that we think that we don't want to do something, the more that we get to, because that's exactly what we're focused on.
Yeah.
I am going to tell you why, period.
Yes.
Their response is their responsibility, not yours.
So if you're in a situation with somebody who's pushing back and pushing for an explanation, you are also allowed to let them know, I am not interested in sharing it at this time, but thank you for asking. And that's enough. That's fine. Totally fine. Because a lot of people don't even know how to do that part either. So it's good to put that out there.
Yes.
Yeah, because if you're not exposed to that kind of conversation, then you wouldn't know it exists. So there it is.
And here's the tough part. It's not easy to be honest, fully, quickly, and have a period on it. It's not easy. Why? Because of that, we already don't feel safe. When we feel like we have to justify and we have to explain ourselves, we already don't feel safe. We already feel the jitters because, oh God, they don't believe me. I feel like I did something wrong. You have to battle that first.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is that, well, why? Their reaction to what you just said, which was your truth. And you are expecting them to be okay immediately. So you put an attachment on a response that hasn't happened yet. And a lot of times the exact response that happens is opposite to what you expect, good or bad. A lot of times it's the exact opposite. So your response to possibly needing to justify even more and go even further to satiate their needs because they didn't receive enough information can cause a back and forth and justification. You feel worse about yourself. Your body starts to feel even worse. And you're back to square one.
Get rid of judgment. Expectations come from judgment. You're putting pressure on yourself. You're self-sabotaging in all those little ways. So everything you mentioned is absolutely what people do. And those are all self-sabotaging things. So become aware of yourself, learn yourself, just give yourself space to process what it is that you're experiencing, and then choose something different for yourself going forward. The more you learn, the more you expand your knowledge, the less you'll feel like you have to justify yourself in any direction.
Exactly.
Because the more you'll heal. I think you do good work. Thank you, Phoenix Talks.
And and we got to wrap up here shortly because I know that you're specific on time today.
Yeah. Self-care
But
Saturday.
when you catch yourself justifying, find an end to that statement and be okay with it, regardless of what the response is. Once you get to a point where you can say your reason, your why, directly, honestly, authentically, from that genuine place inside, and you keep it this small instead of this small, how they respond won't matter as much or have as much weight. Does that mean you don't care about them? No. Does that mean that their opinion doesn't matter? No. It doesn't mean that. How they react isn't your responsibility or your accountability.
I'm going to add on to that and continue that on to say that you are allowed to not take them on a deeper level, because I think that there's like that deeper sense of responsibility comes from your programming. So analyze that that aspect of it, and just stop judging yourself. There was something else that, but it was one of those fleeting ones, and it left the building already. So if folks have enough meat and potatoes to have it come into their own consciousness.
I believe so.
Thank
And
you for having
it's
me.
right at the time that you had requested that we end, and I think that we've given a lot to unpack and think about.
Absolutely.
And guys, thank you so much for viewing. Hildy, thank you for watching the live. I appreciate it. And anybody who watches the replay, if you want to reach out to either Diane or myself, check out the links in the description, either in this particular video or any of the previous, because we want to help you. We want to work with you and get you to rise into the phoenix that you can be, that's hiding inside.
Yes.
So thank you again for joining.
Thank you.
Comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click that little bell so that you'll get the notifications when we go live. Don't forget, April 27th, we will not be live that day. We may do a pre-recording, or we may just take a break for mid-spring. Who knows? But until next week, who knows what we're going to talk about. Everybody have a great week. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining. Thank you, Diane, for a great conversation. And love you, appreciate you, and we will talk soon.
Thank you.